Welcome to NTR Radio. I'm Tom Force.
And I'm VZ Mark II, Sans K Gods.
Yeah, so couple programmatic announcements that we need to make. Unrelated actually, but we do have multiple. Number one is that K Gods has left the show. And then number two is that we have done our first major format revision in the last 8 years. Like a while ago we decided that the third segment was not always required, but now we're basically coming in line with basically every other podcast on the planet and doing the whole thing in one segment.
Yeah. So the podcast should be anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes as opposed to 3 hours.
As opposed to my voice being like, dude, you do 3 hours of straight talking? You barely talk in real life. What are you doing to me? So, what's been going on, VZ?
Honestly, not much. Kind of a slow week from the last one. As far as and I really haven't been watching much new other than the shows of the week, obviously, and still working with Turn A Gundam. I haven't finished it, so when I finish it, I'll discuss more in detail.
I know I am 100% caught up now on Uzaki-chan. What a fun show.
It is kind of fun. You know, I don't think it's the type of thing that I would ever get a figure from, but I do. I you know, it is enjoyable. Haters gonna hate.
Well, it's part of it is it's honestly the most inoffensive show.
It really is. It's nothing to be I don't really see why, because she has boobs. That's but she's short. Is that really
I mean, I guess that's it. I really can't think of another reason to be going off on the show like this.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly never. There's been other characters like that or similar. So I don't know why. Other than it's 2020 and people get outraged easily.
I feel it's that. And also, I think it's hilarious how, you got the same people who are always complaining about anime taking place in high school. So now we get an anime that takes place in a college, but they find a reason to be mad at that.
I think these people don't want anime school in general. I think they want, whatever No Guns Life is.
Well, they want an anime that's not... we can have an anime about adults, but it can't be lighthearted and fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's anime about adults, but if you're gonna get adults in Japan, it's gonna be mostly in either a working setting or an office, and there's gonna be the slight, even if it's a comedy, there's gonna be the slight crushing weight of reality.
Well, it's
the salaryman life.
Well, it's you've got Uzaki-chan, you've got Genshiken, you've got Servant Service.
Yes.
I own the DVD, but I haven't watched it yet. Are the people in working adults?
No. There's some adult characters, but Popular is high school. Also, Inami is high school.
All right, so we'll skip that. But you've got Shirobako, you've got Sakura Quest.
There's a bunch with adults.
There's a whole bunch of anime with adults, but nobody seems to watch those, even though they constantly complain about anime not having adults, grown people in it.
Golden Time, which was also college.
But yeah,
That was the selling point, believe it or not, of that show. Was that, oh look, they're in college, or
yeah.
at
I
least that's what
mean,
it seemed.
and I mean, did it really work out for them as a selling point? Not to say that having an anime about people in college is bad, but you'd think that the people clamoring the most for this would be supporting like all of these shows, but that's not what they're after.
No. What people should be outraging on is Rent a Girlfriend.
I still need to actually start on that.
Yes. Well, here's the thing. How masochistic are you?
That's my thing, is that I know I'm gonna get pissed at this point, so I might
mean,
as well just.
From what you told me about School Days, so you might as well.
School Days is a special kind of special kind of anime.
And you also gotta one day watch both Ori Shura and Orisuki.
I do need to finish
those
Orisuki.
Yeah, both of those will manage to piss you off in some way, but not as much as this one. This one is just like, again, there's no one likable in I don't know how he likes his ex-girlfriend either, because she's a bitch too. And it's funny, he sits there and he masturbates to her, like picture of her on his phone, and it's like, yeah. Time to move on. Time to move on, bro. It's time to move on. Yeah, they did the thing where, oh no, I wanted to describe one scene.
Go for it.
It was actually like a cliffhanger where main girl Chizuru falls over a boat, and then the main guy goes after her, and then the next episode she like washes up on the shore, and he no, it would have been funny if they did the thing where it's like she lost, like, you've seen this before, like when someone like washes up on something, and it's like, oh, who are you?
Oh yeah, Code Geass did that.
I wish that, see, the show was smart or clever, they would have done that, and then he could have sit there and said, "You're my girlfriend." I am. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, you love having sex with me constantly. I do. Well, okay. See, the show is funny and actually clever in that way. But nah, they didn't do that. See. Okay, so anything else?
So I did make one purchase the other day. I was up in the bookstore. By the way, the bookstore still has No Game, No Life. So I was up in the bookstore and looking at like the manga and the light novel section. This fucking heavy ass thing in my hand stood out to me. Apparently, J Novel Club put out the 3 Crest of the Stars novels in a fucking gold on black badass hardcover release. So yeah,
so you got that.
Still need to finish the anime, but yeah, so I got the. They put, yeah, it's basically just an omnibus of the 3 Crest of the Stars novels, and they put that out.
And that
in
comes
hardcover.
before. And that comes before, Band of the Stars.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Because I never seen the show, but I know of it.
Right. It's weird. I remember seeing a lot of art of that main girl way before I even knew what Crest of the Stars was. Anyway, we don't have any news, so we're going to move on straight into the main topic. And this one's interesting because I
Yeah.
VZ,
I found this for you.
Yeah. VZ sent me this article
I was like,
And
oh, this is excellent fodder.
I got like 3 paragraphs into it, and I'm like, yeah, we need to fucking talk about this. So
Galapagos syndrome.
this is going in the IRC momentarily. The IRC is the place that live listeners chat during the show, which you can get to by going to ntrradio.net, clicking on the chat link. You put your name in the box and hit the button and join us in the IRC channel. Alternatively, you can take your favorite IRC client, point it at irc.ryzen.net, and join us in the pound or hash SLC media channel. In addition, you can get at us on Twitter at TENubis, at VZMK2, at NTR_radio, and as always, the email address to get involved with the show is ntrradio@gmail.com. So, the article is Tadashi Sudo, does Japanese animation suffer from Galapagos syndrome? And it reads as follows. Animation industry journalist and analyst Tadashi Sudo wrote an article published in IT Media on Monday regarding the problems that potentially face the Japanese anime industry in the face of globalization. The central question behind the article was, does Japanese animation suffer from the Galapagos syndrome? Galapagos syndrome is a term of Japanese origin which refers to products created in isolation from the global market that are difficult to export overseas. Sudo argued that due to its distinctive visual style, Japanese animation has historically been very popular when exported overseas since at least the 1960s, with titles like Astro Boy. In the 90s, titles like Akira, Ghost in the Shell also successfully conveyed the unique appeal of Japanese anime, and the boom is still continuing to this day. However, as time has passed, other countries are producing animation with similar appeal to Japanese anime. Instead of defining the world standard into the future, as Hollywood and Disney have done in the past, Japanese animation is at risk of suffering from the Galapagos syndrome, while creative teams overseas produce more globally appealing content. Sudo argued that what needs to change about Japanese animation is not the visual style, nor does the content need to change specifically to appeal to a global audience. Remember that sentence, by the way. The biggest thing that needs to change is that Japan itself needs more diversity, and it needs to become more exposed to foreign cultures. As an example of a situation where there was a lack of knowledge regarding foreign perspectives, Sudo brought up a controversy around the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure OVA in 2008, where Shueisha apologized for a scene in which the villain, Dio, is shown reading the Quran.
Yeah, this was the 90s OVA, by the way, that they were referring to.
Yeah, the controversy was in 2008, but the OVA they're talking about was from the 90s.
Yeah.
It is important to be aware that a large number of people are watching anime to an extent that was previously inconceivable, and that these viewers come from diverse backgrounds, Sudo wrote. There are quite a few things that are taboo that we would previously not have realized. We ought to make the utmost consideration. He then clarified that this is a separate matter from political correctness. Rather than globalization, it is a reflection of change in Japan's own society to avoid violent expression in children's media, ensuring gender balance in a cast of characters, and removing bias against gender, age, and race. To Sudo, this is not a matter of keeping up with the world, but in keeping up with the times. There are things that were once permitted that are no longer permitted in this day and age, but this is a separate matter from the globalization or the Galapagos syndrome. Sudo's next point was that while there has been much concern in Japan regarding the uniqueness of Japanese animation, the rest of the world is beginning to change rapidly. Despite the fears of lack of exportability, Japanese animation has been transcending cultural barriers, and other countries are beginning to develop their own style of animation influenced by Japan. Sudo pointed to Netflix's anime category, which can refer to works that were not developed in Japan, but were inspired by the visual style of Japanese animation. Stylistic quirks such as characters with large eyes were once derided or regarded as unusual in Asia and the West, but are now becoming commonplace in foreign animation. Japan has hardly changed, but the world is changing dramatically. The uniqueness of Japanese animation, subject to the uniqueness of Japanese anime, subject to the Galapagos syndrome, has expanded to the world, and that uniqueness is now, in fact, becoming diluted, he observed. The spread of the Japanese style can be seen as a sign of success for Japanese culture. On the contrary, however, it bodes difficult times ahead for Japan. The style, which was once thought to belong only to Japan, can be created outside the country, which compromises Japan's top position and increases competition. Sudo does not believe that Japanese animation will lose its unique traits, but in the worst-case scenario, Japan could lose out to its competition, and only the visual style will remain in the world. It is because of Japan's previous successes that this danger has become relevant. So where does the future of Japanese anime lie then? Given that the Japanese animation style has transcended cultural barriers, Sudo suggested that the creative and production processes on the Japanese side can also benefit from transcending national barriers. Sudo proposed making anime with a community of people who embrace the style without being conscious of national origin. While Japanese anime accepts foreign talent and culture, when Japanese anime accepts foreign talent and culture, then the place it is made does not have to be Japan. There are many international co-productions that have resulted in failure, but among a community that does not have a conflicting vision about the direction, it should be possible to create global works as a team, he concluded. The success of Hollywood films was the spread of American culture. Because of its success, talented people in the world strive for Hollywood, and people overseas take on its traditions and create things in their own right. Japanese anime can also become strong and bountiful by connecting many talented people all across the world. So,
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack there.
So more or less the gist is that Tadashi Sudo is concerned that the Japanese anime industry might lose out to the likes of Netflix, the likes of Nickelodeon with the Avatar series, the likes of Rooster's Teeth with Ruby and whatnot. Western companies and otherwise creating anime-styled animation and basically taking market share away from the Japanese industry. And chief among his concern about that is that the Japanese style is very easy to export. Well, it's very easy to emulate stylistically. And so his assertion is that Japanese anime needs to shift to appeal more to a global audience rather than continue on the way it's been for the past few decades and create things that appeal to a Japanese audience first and foremost, while also exporting that to other countries that want it.
Well, okay, so my 2 cents is that, which is also what, when other people bring this type of thing up about anime should be made to appeal to the rest of the world, is that this has kind of already happened decades ago with co-productions financed by U.S. companies in the 80s and 90s mostly. But that's one aspect.
We had that sort of thing, and we also had all those Madhouse co-productions with Marvel.
Yeah,
that nobody talks about anymore.
Well, we had Madhouse co-productions. We had DC co-productions. We've had. We had lots.
Let's also separate the idea of a co-production from something like outsourcing animation to Japan because it's cost effective at the time.
Well, yeah, but that's one aspect.
Because I don't think it's necessary nor helpful to conflate something like Batman the Animated Series, which was partially animated in Japan, with something like
I completely forgot about that.
The Big O2.
I was thinking more like Batman Ninja, which came out last year.
Oh yeah, which by the way I've heard nothing about since the last time I heard about it, and that was like a couple years ago.
And there was that because it wasn't as advertised as anime, that's why. There was that thing they made 10 years ago, which was like basically, I forgot what it was called, but it was basically like a bunch of different anime studios do different Batman stories in one thing.
They've done a couple of those. They've done those for several properties. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So like, they had one for Mass Effect. They had one for Halo. They had. Well, you could say that goes all the way back to the Matrix.
Oh yeah, the Animatrix.
The Animatrix.
But
and
yeah,
like those are good, and they're.
Well, it's
they're
interesting.
They're a good way to like merge the anime style with the particular property that they're adapting. Like the Halo one was really good. Like some segments were better than others, definitely, but
also
I
Dante's Inferno was another one.
Dante's Inferno was another one. But so.
I don't remember because Umetsu worked on one segment. Oh no, yeah, was it Umetsu? Yeah, I think so.
So we've had the paradigm of these co-productions when they're based on existing properties. Actually, they're usually based on existing properties. Like I can't think of other than Hero Man. I can't think.
Yeah, Hero Man was totally like we're doing this as a totally original thing.
Yeah, but otherwise, the Big O2 that was a sequel to the Big O. You had all the Madhouse co-productions with the Marvel. You had Halo Legends and all that, where it's based off of a property.
But yeah, you never really had something totally original for the and of course there's a good reason with that. It's how can you prove something being successful just, totally out there.
Right.
Yeah, I'm probably wording it bad. It's interesting that they mentioned both the Netflix and Rooster Teeth, because last week watched, finally saw the Netflix Transformers series. And I really liked that, actually. You know what? Surprised that something 2020 Transformers I enjoy, media-wise. Writing is a little cliche. Like, the dialogue is a little cliche, but it's pretty much what I wanted, which was just do for like what they've been doing with Gundam, but with Transformers. All right, make an adult series that's like Well, okay, how should I put this? Basically, make like the 80s cartoon, but remove the goofy parts, and just make it a little bit more serious.
Well, so
here's
my thing.
The CG was really good.
Speaking of Netflix,
yeah,
it's my perspective that anime on Netflix is 100%, as far as Netflix is concerned, is 100% a marketing term.
Oh, yeah.
and it's not like you can understand if you look into the history of how they market this stuff. Netflix is not above being misleading with their marketing when it comes to anime specifically. Like you'll see anime marketed as Netflix originals when it's a show that like just got done. Like they did that with Knights of Sidonia.
Yeah, they did that with Violent Evergarden.
Yep.
And it was like, yeah, no, I get what you're going for.
So they're also doing their own productions and putting that in the anime category. And what it gets to, and this is kind of my thesis with it, is they're focusing on the visual style, and the visual style alone it's doing the entire concept a disservice, because that's only one aspect of what anime is. And I've seen this mentality everywhere.
Yeah, nobody factors in the way anime is not just written, but as you also say, the way anime is financed.
Well, it's the way it's written and the way it's financed, but people don't like for some reason people really don't like to factor in the cultural aspect. Like, does anyone realistically think that the West, that like America, could have made something like Upate ever?
No. They could never do something like Strike Witches.
Exactly.
You wouldn't even get like a Girls in Concert thing, which is the most mainstream of that Moe military concept.
Right, and
it's the most successful of that concept.
And like you had, as part of the reason why anime has such a diversity of different kinds of show compared to, say, Western animation.
Yeah, especially now. Yeah, but
like people like to talk about how there's so many isekai shows, but that's like you're grasping at straws. Maybe there's 3 or 5 a season, but there's like 20-something shows coming out every season. More than that,
again,
probably.
These people, if they were in the 80s, they would be complaining about, oh, look how many robot shows there are.
Well, they probably wouldn't be, because some of these people like robot shows. But they're complaining about the isekai shows because they don't like the isekai shows. They don't like the cute girl anime aesthetic, and they just want.
Weirdly enough,
they want what they want, and they
don't get like mecha. People don't.
Some of these people don't. Some of these people do. But my point is, the reason they're complaining about isekai is because 1, it's popular, and 2, they don't like it. If it was popular and they liked it, they wouldn't complain. If it was unpopular and they liked it and they didn't like it, they wouldn't complain. But it's popular and they don't like it.
Because, I guarantee those type of people only like mecha for, the characters or the people, not for the mecha.
Well, I guarantee you not a whole lot of them watch mecha, because I guarantee you a whole lot of them are the kinds of people who say the brainless shit like, it's an anime about the characters, not about the robots, as if that isn't every mecha anime.
Yeah, even though that never factors into the merchandise of these things, because it always squarely goes back to the robots. You're not unless it's like Ava, and some other examples. It always goes square back to selling the mecha. So the argument isn't sound as people, say about that.
Yeah. So the issue is that anime is highly diverse, but nobody seems to appreciate why it's so diverse. And quite frankly, few people seem to appreciate how diverse it is. Because
Well,
when they look at the
let's be fair. They have a different definition of diverse. You know, we know what they want.
Well, no, I'm talking specifically on how many different kinds of anime are coming out type of thing. And if you have a visceral reaction to cute anime girl shit, then yeah, when Gochi Usa Bloom comes out in October, along with the new Higurashi, along with Climbing Girls and Kami-sama ni Natani, it's gonna look like everything's just shit right now, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that I have a visceral negative reaction to coming out at the same time. But number one, if you don't have that visceral reaction, then you can actually see that all these shows are completely different things. And number two, if you're able to keep control of yourself and not vomit every time you see big eyes in a big smile, then you'll see that, okay, there's actually a lot of highly varied anime coming out every single season, and you can find something that you actually want to watch. That's one thing. The other thing is that when you have it's part of what we talked about with Wombat last episode, is that the current big business model for the anime industry over here is, okay, we've got this streaming service, so now we gotta go out and market and find all sorts of new fans so we can grow our streaming service, so we can have more people subscribe to our streaming service. What that does, when you have to do that quickly or else your business will die, what that does is that brings in a lot of people who are not in it for the culture, who are more in it because, okay, this service has a show I like, so I'm going to subscribe to the service and watch the show I like, and hey, watch this and watch that. And they're not acclimated to the culture. So what really happens is, it's rare that they become the kinds of big fans that sustain other elements of the industry.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and there's no encouragement for any of them to become that.
Mm-mm.
So that's another issue. But at the same time, when you get to that paradigm, chances are that what appeals to you about anime is the fact that it's anime. The fact that it's something different from what we usually get from people domestically. So if we start to call for, maybe we should get people from countries outside of Japan to start putting their input in anime. I'm not sure how good an idea that is, because what you do is you risk taking away the thing that makes anime unique as a medium, and on some level the thing that makes anime appealing in the first place, which is the fact that it is so far and away different from a lot of what we get over here, to an extent where you've got studios over here actively emulating the anime style. And like, sure, say what you want about the Avatar series, say what you want about stuff, but and it's widespread and it's been going on for a while. Hey, anime has had such a profound influence on a lot of animation in the West. From, you see Steven Universe references anime all the time. You've got shows that take off of the style. Teen Titans got big partially because it had that anime sort of visual style. You got the Boondocks, which took a highly anime aesthetic and mixed it with different cultural elements from black culture. You had a lot of that sort of mixing going on, and a great deal of it was one way. Like you had a couple anime that really took more Western visual styles. So like you had Panty and Stocking. You had parts of Fooly Cooly.
Most of the anime referencing Western stuff is mostly in older, like, because we know, like, I could run off forever, like, naming how many 80s action movies are referenced in anime and such. Which there's today they don't have the same interest in Western IP.
Well,
the way they once did.
Well, yeah, and that speaks to my point, is a lot of this influence is from Japan to the U.S. and
I was gonna say.
Go ahead.
The last time I seen the something Western being influenced into anime, two things. One was The Matrix, and the other was Harry Potter.
And The Matrix itself was highly influenced by anime.
Yes.
So that's sort of like crossing the ocean twice. So that kind of speaks to my point, is that what's influential is on some level the visual style, but on another level the cultural influence. And I think that a lot of the conversation is lost when we refuse to talk about the cultural influence of anime. And I don't know why people want to talk about it. Well, I know why people don't want to talk about it, is because, well, part of the reason, I'm guessing, is because if you start talking about the cultural influence of anime and why that's important, it suddenly starts to become really unfair what some people are saying about anime culturally, because then that means that they're trying to change exactly what makes anime successful globally. But at the same time, it's missing a big part of the conversation, and I don't understand why anyone is so afraid of the cultural
because you get labeled a weeaboo. That's why.
I have so little respect for that perspective, because like, who the fuck cares?
Oh, I don't think, I'm just saying. I'm sure there's some people that are like that. They like anime, but they're sort of embarrassed that
And I'm talking people who are trying to ask important questions about anime, trying to answer important questions about anime. None of them will talk about the influence from its own culture being part of an element that makes it unique as a medium.
And that definitely includes the stuff that they kind of don't want to, basically put in a shoebox and bury it in the backyard.
Well, they need to cut it the fuck out.
You know,
'Cause
Japan likes, little Emoto anime.
It's like, we can't fucking do this forever. Like, what are we? Like, are we gonna try and have a conversation or not? And if the answer is no, if the answer is no, then let's everyone shut the fuck up and watch their anime. But if we want to have a conversation, if we want to actually answer some of these questions, and what it comes down to is that, and I'm not talking about Tadashi Sudo at this point. I'm talking about all the people who like, oh well, what is anime really? I mean, some of the episodes of Batman the animated series were made in Japan. So if you're saying that if it's made in Japan, then it's an anime, then that must mean Batman the animated series is an anime. Is Avatar the Last Airbender an anime? I don't know. Maybe it is. Somehow that's an anime, but Sazai-san isn't. All that stupid shit that
because we haven't invented a term yet. That's it. People love categories, but we haven't invented enough categories to say like, okay, this is, because to me an anime, I draw anime obviously, but the answer would be produced or at least marketed for the Japanese audience first and foremost would be the correct answer.
I mean, so like, well, here,
and Avatar is not that. It's anime influenced.
But that's the thing is, when you get down to that, then they're gonna start splitting hairs, because, I mean, technically, Space Dandy aired in the U.S. first. That's a fact. It did. Does that mean that's not anime?
No, because it was still produced in Japan, with a Japanese director and it happened to.
Well, it's like you're gonna say that, and they're gonna pull out their fucking filing cabinet and find an anime or a show that you wouldn't otherwise consider an anime, just going off of like your gut instinct, but that happened to have a Japanese director that happened to be animated in Japan.
Yeah, I don't know people saying Saizai-san isn't anime. I mean, why? Because it doesn't have,
I don't know.
No, I don't like.
Well, I don't know what the logic behind that take is.
Because it doesn't look like, large eyes. It doesn't have the shonen or shoujo aesthetic.
Oh, well then.
It doesn't.
Well then, Penny and Stocking isn't an anime, because that looks like fucking Powerpuff Girls. So we can do this all day, if we don't want to talk about the culture. We can do this all fucking day, if we don't want to talk about how there are certainly elements of Japanese culture that influence Cowboy Bebop. We can find out what those are.
Yeah, people had this weird notion that Cowboy Bebop was made for the Western audience, and that is not true. It was influenced by Western aesthetic, obviously, but it was made for Japan first. It just, I mean, it came out a couple of years after its original airing.
Well, it's like,
but it was never intended for the Western audience originally. That just happened.
But
and that's
that's an interesting point, actually, VZ. Because why does something like Cowboy Bebop have to be created for the Western audience? Like, why is that the first place we go to when we see that Cowboy Bebop takes a lot of influence from the jazz music, from like the Western genre, from like American film and whatnot, John Woo? Like, why is the first place we go that it was? Oh, it must have been made for us.
um, because it it did really well here, but not as not. I mean, it actually was more successful in Japan than people say it is, but
I
it
mean, to
wasn't.
my knowledge, Sword Art Online did well here too.
Yeah, okay, that's true. Trying to think. I, I mean, I know one notion
If
is
you can't,
that
if you can't, go ahead.
you can't artificially create something like basically what they tried to do with Space Dandy. They tried to do that.
Yeah, you can't do that deliberately.
Yeah, it doesn't
And
work.
here's the $1 million question: why is that the case? Why can't you deliberately make something for the West and have it be wildly successful like Cowboy Bebop was?
Well, see, I would say one, maybe lightning in a bottle. Certainly,
You could
the
argue
time
that,
period.
certainly. Absolutely.
But the other is, I think when you try to deliberately make it for the Western, you lose the little bits of cultural touches. Even if you're making something look Western, you're still going to have those little Japanese touches that
you are
actually appeal
110% correct.
to the rest of the world. Because look,
You are 120% correct.
All right, here's something people don't talk about or realize. And it's been successful around the world before America. And what I mean by that is, okay, I'm going to try to piece this together. You know how we only got like Voltron, made up of like 2 robot shows,
Beast King, Go Lion, and all the shit.
Yeah. You know how we only got Robotech made out of 3 shows. You know how we only got
Merchant Cavalry, Southern Cross,
handfuls of these things. That's not the case in like other countries. Italy in the 80s got almost all the Super Robot shows. All right? Almost all the Super Robot shows, including First Gundam. They got that early on. They also, these countries also got, when I say countries, I'm talking about like Europe and even some countries in South America and such. Or
Mecca is huge in Latin America.
I should say,
as far as
I should say Latin American
yeah,
countries.
to my knowledge.
Robot shows. Also, shoujo. Look how long it took. It wasn't until Sailor Moon. And then that was a struggle originally. But they got all those, shoujo things. Saint Seiya. You know what? Saint Seiya came out like 20 years here, when the rest of the world, at least half of the other countries, I think it was like Latin America and some countries in Europe got Saint Seiya fairly early on. So the anime's been marketable much further longer, but again, because we have our own animation industry, we tend to put that priority first, and for a long time anime was always seen as a secondary, only because anime was seen as this thing to just bring over because it was made already, but all we have to do is chop it up and edit out stuff.
Right.
But that's not really the case anymore. We don't live in that world anymore.
Exactly.
We don't live in the world where you have to watch these things at a specific time. Yes, I'm sure we're all nostalgic for Saturday morning cartoons, but realistically, there's no need for that anymore.
Exactly. And you're 130% correct. If you look at the success of Super Robot shows in the 80s in Italy, if you look at the success of mecha in general in Latin America, if you look worldwide at the success of anime, the common denominator is that it's anime. It's not it's not an intercultural thing. It's not like, oh, the Italians like something like this different thing about this show, but the Norwegians like this other thing about this show, about the same show, and the fucking the Latvians like this other thing about this particular show. It's not that complicated.
No.
And I'm trying to look for an article I put out on Ayashike, I think a couple years ago.
But I think also again it's that whole even though anime is actually much tamer than, and I have examples to I've where, oh, why are they doing all this fan service stuff? Why are they doing all this older anime wasn't like that. First off, you realize that the stuff that's being marketed through Crunchyroll is late night anime.
Well, most of the anime that we give a fuck about here in the US is late night anime.
Yeah, even though we claim to hate it, which is weird because we claim to hate that stuff, but that's the stuff that's being marketed. So, what do you want? You want like shonen, like children's anime? You want only is that? Because just say that. That's
also okay. So here's the article I was talking about. They did an interview with Henry Goto, who was the former president of Aniplex of America. At the time, he was president of Aniplex of America. So ANN did this interview with him, and they were talking about the global market of anime. Because, like, AOA has gone global, and they're trying to market this anime all across the world to various different countries. And the question was, from a content standpoint, what do you think the prescription is? Do you think anime should just forge ahead doing what it's doing, being anime as it is now, or do you think it's going to change to meet that global audience? Do you think it needs to lose any of its cultural identity to be even more global? And the answer was, yes, I think so. Yes being, do you think anime should just forge ahead? Because an audience is an audience. One Sword Art Online fan in Japan, one Sword Art Online fan in the US, same fan. And so the follow-up was, but in terms of meeting that global audience, you're going to start selling shows to Germans and whoever else in the world. Do you think Aniplex Japan is going to start creating television that is aimed more at that global audience? So the content itself will be potentially more appealing to an even bigger global audience. Like, do you now need to consider what a German fan wants to see? And this is the response to that. It's like, I can probably defer to Hayao Miyazaki's words, to paraphrase. I'm making a movie for a Japanese audience, but there are people all over the world with the same mentality as Japanese fans. So I think, like radio waves, some people get it. Even in Japan, everyone is not an anime fan, right? It's like not everyone in Japan likes anime. Not everyone in the US likes anime either. So there must be some kind of common thing that both Japanese anime fans and the US anime fans, and I'm not quoting anymore, by the way, there must be some sort of common thing that both Japanese anime fans and US anime fans hone in on anime specifically. And obviously it's not the visual style, because if that was the case, we would see a much different paradigm going on with a lot of these shows that are coming out that are doing the anime visual style. And I think part of it's the culture. I think there are subtle cultural elements in things like Cowboy Bebop that you can't just you can't just force like that. There's subtle elements in things like Cowboy Bebop, in things like Samurai Champloo. All of these other anime that are real big in like, and I'm talking real big, like, say what you want about Cowboy Bebop, people fucking love it. People fucking love it, and it's a fucking good anime. That's and like, people out here. How long have people loved Dragon Ball? Like, think about that. Since before the days of, like, when I saw it back in the late 90s on Toonami. This is before that. That's over 20 years. People continuously loved Dragon Ball. Generations of anime fans loved Dragon Ball. And that is not a very American show. Like, at all.
No.
So,
soon to probably be banned in Australia also.
Fucking everything's getting banned there. But it's, you look at something like Samurai Champloo. Yes, there is a ton of Western influence, particularly hip hop culture. But it's that mix with the Japanese culture that makes it so good. It's basically the opposite of the Boondocks, which is part of the reason why the Boondocks is so good, is because where Samurai Champloo is Japanese based, but picks and chooses, takes from Western culture where it needs to. The Boondocks is very Western based, but picks and chooses from Japanese culture where it needs to. They're mirror images of each other, but it's not a highly deliberate, oh, we're trying to appeal to a certain kind of person sort of thing, and that's what makes it work. The cultural influence is artistic, not a, like, as much as I love being the business guy and the marketing guy in terms of anime, the cultural influence is, in terms of picking from outside of the culture, is artistic and not marketing based.
And that's the aspect that I'm more adept at.
Yeah, and I don't know that you can do that in a marketing based paradigm. You can certainly create endearing characters from a marketing based paradigm. They've done that multiple times. I don't know that you can do the same with culture. I don't know that you can force a kind of culture that appeals to a particular kind of consumer. I don't know that you're going to be able to do that consistently every time. I don't know that you're going to be able to do that 51% of the time. Because I think there's something particular about anime that we're not really talking about. And that's the fact that it's got this very unique cultural aspect that nobody in the rest of the world has been able to replicate, because it's so subtle. And sometimes it's very overt. But if you look at the Cowboy Bebops of the world, and a lot of the highly popular anime that's remembered for years and decades, it's subtle. You can pick it out. You can, if you go in with a magnifying glass, you can say, oh, okay, well, this was influenced by like the samurai culture and whatnot, but it's subtle. It's a background radiation of the culture over there, rather than, oh, okay, we're gonna try to market to the Western fan base, so we're gonna make it like this.
And that never works.
And it might make something popular for a little bit, but where's the longevity? Like, people remember Cowboy Bebop. People remember Evangelion. People remember this shit, but where else have you heard about Redline except for this podcast? Like, that movie was made to appeal to Westerners. And it got tons of praise when it came out, but was it not that good? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe you can't deliberately capture that Western appeal in a bottle like that. Maybe you can't really... And Burgermeister in the IRC, people only talk about Redline in terms of its animation.
Yeah, they never talk about the story. It's like, story sucks.
Well, if they took that kind of animation and did something good with it, it would have been amazing. But they were trying to do something deliberate with it, and it didn't work. And I don't know, like, when are we gonna stop acting like this is gonna work? Let's appeal to the Western audience. Let's deliberately try and appeal to the Western audience. And
don't you know? Apparently, there's more people here than in Japan. So
Jesus Christ. That's some 2011 shit. But it's like, has that ever worked? Like, name me one anime that tried to do that that's remembered fondly by a lot of people. Like, to a level of a Cowboy Bebop or Evangelion's kind of a high bar, but to a level of a Cowboy Bebop or a My Hero Academia or a Dragon Ball, or even
don't say Pop Team Epic either, because that was originally made for Japan. Also.
I also haven't heard a thing about Pop Team Epic since that show finished airing.
Yeah, but wasn't this supposed to be a second season? No?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's like I haven't heard dude since.
But, like, name me an anime like that was deliberately made for Western audience and managed to gain some kind of longevity.
The closest equivalent I could think of ever, but again, may not even count by your definition, would be Transformers, especially Transformers the movie.
Yeah, and certainly, but then we have to get into a discussion about whether or not that is even an anime. And so the only thing we have is something that is debatable whether or not it's an anime. And it's
finding out Satoshi Urashihara worked on that is like, the best come full circle. It's like, you like this thing when you were a kid, VZ. You like this thing when you were a teen. Hey, VZ, did you know that both of those things were done by the same person? And it's like, what?
But it's like, can we start noticing patterns? That every time
that's another thing. These people are atrocious at noticing patterns.
I actually don't think that they're actually like you have to understand how really good human beings are at pattern recognition. Like, we see patterns like, what the fuck are constellations? Like, we look at the stars and say, oh, well, that's a gazelle. When it's like 6 stars that we just took these 6 stars out of a whole bunch of other stars and started drawing invisible lines and say, oh, that's a gazelle. That's a large spoon. That one's a small spoon. Like, human beings are so good at recognizing patterns that we see patterns where they fundamentally cannot exist. So I have a hard time thinking that people don't recognize these patterns. I think that there are a lot of people who want something out of anime but don't seem to be getting it as often as they want it. And as a result, they're trying to solve that problem by doing something that I'm guessing we're concluding that this solution, quote unquote, has yet to come to fruition, has yet to yield a result that is what people are looking for. And I wonder if we can, understand that pattern and get to a point where it's like, okay, every single anime that has gotten any sort of longevity, that has gotten any sort of popularity in the West, that has been on people's radar for more than a year, has been the result of the Japanese industry being left to its own devices.
Yeah. Oh, can we finally stop vilifying the production committee? Because I've seen that brought up here. It was like they got to stop the production committee. I'm like, what bad has the production committee done?
Well, so and we do not have a whole lot of time left, but I can get into quote unquote a bad the production committee's done. See, because we have the support the industry narrative, but nobody ever told anyone what the industry is, like the industry in air quotes, what that is. We ended up with this paradigm where as soon as people, okay, so paradigm 1, people think that the anime industry is the anime studios. So they think that Kiyoani and JC Staff and A1 Productions and all that the rogues gallery of studios, they're all the anime industry. Then people find out what a production committee is, and they know that, okay, the production committee is the people overseeing the anime, and they handle all the money. And they also know that animators are notoriously underpaid.
Yeah, well, okay, that's one of the bad things.
So so here's the thing: they draw a connection between that. So okay, well, the production committee is handling all the money, and then the animators are underpaid. So it's like if you walk into a room and you see one guy with $4 and one guy with $1, and you immediately assume that the guy with $4 somehow robbed the guy with $1.
There's actually, they put out, I don't feel like tracking down, but they actually put out another article that was like basically saying the anime industry is pretty bad at accounting, and very few people that are in the industry know how to do the accounting part. And Hideki Anno is an example of someone who knows how to do the, of an anime creator that's also, also does the accounting for the studio.
So when you talk about the industry, are you talking about the studios, or are you talking about the entire production committee? Because that's important.
I don't know, but I think in the case of like Studio Kara, for example, when he moved over, for example, from Gainax to Studio Kara.
So now my question would be, why don't these anime studios have good accountants? Because that seems like a significant problem. But that's something that, well, if you find that article, link it to me. I'll probably do an Otaku Entrepreneur article on it. But so continuing.
Oh, I found it.
Okay.
I found it. I don't. Oh, here I'll post in the thing.
Do send me the link. Yeah.
All right, because All right. Yeah, poor accounting at animation studio.
Okay, so it's an anime production studio. So so the question is, why don't the studios have have better accountants? But that's a topic for another time. So that's paradigm 2, is that they walk into the door, they see the production committees with a whole lot of money and the studios with a little money, and they believe that the production committee somehow robbed the anime studios because they know what a production committee is, but they haven't quite worked out, or they haven't quite been taught what their role is and how crucial their role is. So that's how you get to that point where we need to reform the production committee business model, because the animators are underpaid, and so they need to pay them more. It's kind of like you... did you see the video by Canepa about the wages of Crunchyroll translators?
No, but I've heard something about.
So $80 an episode is the off-cited figure, and the short version is that is a holdover from when Crunchyroll went legit, and there was one fan subber who created basically an agency of other fan subbers, and because they previously worked for free and now they were in the employ of Crunchyroll, the guy basically set the standard price for that kind of work, and because they previously worked for free and basically anything was better than nothing, he said it, okay, $80 an episode, because he knew he could undercut all the competition like that. And so that has been the figure since then. And there's a lot of vilification of Crunchyroll in particular, because they're paying these people, they're paying $80 an hour. You can't make a living as a Crunchyroll translator. And listen, please believe I'm ready to shit on Crunchyroll, but I don't think this is it. I don't that ain't it, dog. I don't think that. So the question is, why doesn't Crunchyroll pay its translators less? Because if we're gonna agree that they're a greedy ass company, and we're gonna agree that they're paying these translators poverty wages and whatnot, why haven't they dropped their prices since then? Why haven't they dropped how much they're paying since then? And so that's the big question. I have an Yashike article about, not an Yashike, an Otaku Entrepreneur article about that, but you get to a point where you have to understand the business model, and a lot of people don't understand the business model, and that's why they vilify their production committee, because in their mind the production committee is stealing from the animators, when in reality, if the production committee didn't make as much money as they did making anime, none of those animators would have a job. So it becomes a choice between, okay, we're gonna make these low wages, which, don't get me wrong, are a problem and are something that needs to be addressed. But also, if it wasn't like this, there wouldn't be employment for them. So they wouldn't get to work in this industry. So that's why it's a complex issue.
Yeah, it's a complex issue that people on this site just don't have the full story on to even comment on.
Well, what's hilarious is that Justin Savakis actually did a really good series about how anime is made on Anime News Network.
Yeah.
It's like the resources are there. Resources are there. I don't know why people don't use them. Yeah, Burgermeister.
It's not on the front page. Because it's not on the front page.
No, that's probably one reason. Burgermeister in the IRC. I think I said before that people desperately want to return to the 80s OVA creator-driven eras to replace the production committee system. It's like, and that's fine to want, but it's not going to fucking happen.
No, that was a different market era because that had to do with the bubble economy.
Yep.
Where, and but the new format that was the OVA with rental shops, and basically we want content, make anything. Here's some money, go make a 45-minute to an hour long, or anywhere from a half an hour, 45-minute, hour thing, whatever. And it's we're not marketing to a specific, even though there is some of that, but it's just do whatever. There is no audience.
Yep.
You yourself, and that's why you got so many stuff that today seems very self-indulgent. But I think that's what that's what happened. And see, Netflix could have been that, but it's not. It could have been the new OVA.
Netflix could have been that, but they don't care about anime. It is a brand to them.
Mm.
And so when that money ran out at the tail end of the 80s, the only way we continue getting anime, because there is still a demand for anime at that point, the only way we continue getting anime is if we form the production committee business model. So as much as people like to bitch about it, it's kind of the reason we still have anime in the first place. So does it have problems? Maybe it does, but we can't just flip the table on it because we have this simplistic paradigm of them stealing money from the studios. Anyway, we are coming up on the end of the show. So that'll be the show. The email address is ntrradio@gmail.com. Website, ntrradio.net. VZ is... His blog is at vzmk2monomekagatai.wordpress.com. He is vzmk2 on Twitter. BigBookOfIdols.com is the book. I, Tom Enforcer Nubis, I, Tom Enforcer Nubis, write at iashike.moe as well as otakuentrepreneur.com. At CE Nubis is myself on Twitter. At NTR_radio is the show on Twitter. I'm Tom Enforcer Nubis.
And I'm VZ Mark 2.
Check out Asobi FM, Otaku Midnight, the Bakugaijin show, and even though we suffer from Galapagos syndrome every time we say it, this is NTR Radio.